So welcome to configuring a tank. In this video we're going to specifically set up our tank. We're going to make sure it sits on the ground properly, that we actually spawn a player when we start the game. We'll sort the camera out in a future lecture, that we can have player tanks and third-party tanks. And as I say, that physics is working. We'll be simplifying the tank blueprint a little bit, tweaking the tank track positions, and a few other little bits, setting the game mode, etc. So let's get on with that. Okay, so before we start making this tank move, let's fix it up a little bit. There are some issues, right? It's sitting into the floor. My tracks actually aren't positioned correctly. There's things wrong with the blueprint in terms of the way that it's laid out and the root components, etc. So we will be arranging that. The tank is not the default pawn at the moment. When we play, we do not possess the tank. We don't spawn a tank. So yeah, a few things we need to sort out. Let's take them one at a time. Let's start with adding a mass to the tank and getting some physics going. So if you lift the tank off the ground and play it, you notice it just hangs in the air because it's not simulating physics. Well, that's a really easy fix. Over at the tank, on the tank component, not the default scene root, because we're going to be replacing that in a moment. In fact, let's just replace that now. We don't need a default scene and root component. That gives us things like a transform and physics, etc. But so does the static mesh of the tank itself. So simpler is better. The tank static mesh does more than the default scene root, so we're going to get rid of it. The way you do that is you grab hold of the tank and just parent it, or what looks like parenting it to the default scene root. But you'll see that it says drop here to make the tank the new root. The default root will be deleted. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now the tank is at the root. So it's a simpler hierarchy. So that's a thumbs up from me. So next we go to the tank, which is now at the root, and turn on simulate physics, and let's assign a sensible mass. Well, tanks are somewhere between 10 and 60, 70 tons. So I'm going to go for 40 metric tons, 40,000 kilos, 40,000. Okay, so that's the mass. We have some simulate physics on. We'll worry about the other physics properties later. So of course you need to compile the blueprint and play. Let's just see. So with your tank off the ground, let's see what happens. Falls to the ground, hits the ground very nicely this time. And that's because if we look at the tracks as models, as static meshes, you can see that the collision mesh that Unreal has created for us here, this purple outline, is actually pretty good and pretty appropriate. So that's why the tank is falling until it hits the collision mesh of the tracks. Great. All right, so that's that bit done. Now, I need to fine-tune the position of these tracks. My left track is a little bit too far out. It's just sticking out here. And my right track, if we were to rotate the tank or just line ourselves up here, you can see is miles off. So I'm just going to put the tank near the floor. And not to confuse things, by the way, I'm actually going to move this tank and spin it round because, remember, there's a player start point here. And that's where we're going to spawn our tank. This tank that we've placed in the world is not going to be our tank. This is an AI tank, or will become an AI tank. Remember that we spawn the player into the world, as per the previous section. So, ooh, wrong axis. I'm just going to spin this tank around like that. And then if we play, what we've got is effectively an enemy tank, and we are the current player. All right, so there's the tank. It's just off the ground. It falls to the ground when we start. It's all looking good. The challenge we have right now is these track positions. So, being very careful with Unreal's buggy socket system, I'm going to go into the tank body, and actually once you've renamed these sockets, I think it's pretty stable now. Let's see how it is. So I'm going to go to the left track, I'm going to pick myself a preview mesh again, and then I'm going to line up and just pull it in a little bit. That's good. In fact, you probably want to use, let's say, a left view, is it? Something like that, in lit. Yeah, something like that. Or maybe it's a right view. Here you go. Right view, and then the left track. You can see there's like a notch here in the body. We can probably want to line that notch up, something like that. Now, if it's, of course, if it's snapping wrongly, then you take your position snap, which is this one here, and you turn the value right down. So you can get the track in just the right position. There, great. All right, let's do the same on the right track. I'm always nervous when touching these sockets because they're buggy, or at least they are at the time of recording. There you go. That looks fine to me. Let's try putting a new tank in the world, because this tank that's already in the world, oh, it has actually updated. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But this has. That's fantastic. So the tank is looking much better. And of course, any new tanks we drop in the world will have these new properties as well. So that's cool. Great. So we've added mass to the tank. We fine-tuned the track position. We've sorted out the root component in the blueprint, so the tank is there, simplifying things. We've enabled physics and assigned a mass, as I said. We now need to set the tank to the default pawn. Now, of course, you've done that before. So I want you to set the tank blueprint as the default pawn. Create a battle tank game mode blueprint based on the battle tank game mode C++ class. There are several ways of doing that. We've done it in the previous section. Assign the tank as the default pawn and check that the correct tank spawns on play. So if your player start like mine is in the ground, you may have a little bit of trouble. You may need to move the player start. There's a hint for you. All right, we want to make sure that it's a new tank spawns, not just the one we've dropped in the world, but once we're playing, there should be two, the one we left in the world and the one that spawns on play, i.e. us. Go ahead, pause the video, see if you can make that stuff work now. Welcome back. So I'm going to create the battle tank game mode blueprint a slightly different way. The previous way I think that we did it is we went to the game mode here, the C++ game mode, right click and create blueprint class based on it. You can do that, or you can notice that you can just go to blueprint and you can look at the project settings for the game mode, which we're not going to change for now. But the world override for this particular world, we're going to use a new game mode here. So you want that setting, world override, lets you get to a place where you can create a new blueprint class based on the battle tank game mode. Exactly the same as right-clicking on the battle tank game mode C++ on the left and creating a blueprint. I just wanted to show you this other menu. So there it is. Let's call it battle tank game mode _ blueprint. And this tells the game mode, of which we'll only have one, what the default pawn is, the tank blueprint. Cool. So that's down there under classes, tank blueprint. All right, and remember we're in the full blueprint editor here, so that's why it's quite complex looking. Great, so if we now play, what happens? Well, we end up halfway in the floor. Let's depossess F8. It lets you eject from the possessed player. So what's going on? Where are we? If we look at the world outliner, we have a tank there, but that's not us actually. We have a player controller and a player state. Something's a bit funny. So when something's a bit funny, it's a good habit to go to your developer tools and make sure that you have your output log. Look, spawn actor failed because of collision at spawn location, which is that location there. So what is that location there? Well, it's probably the location of player start. Let's have a look. Yes, it is 00112. So what's happening is that our player start, let me just give myself some room here. If we just go to it, is in the ground. And then the tank can't spawn there because the player start's in the ground. So if I move the player start off the ground a bit and try playing again, aha, the camera's all wrong, but look what happens. The tank spawns, and now we have two tanks. If I eject with the F8 key, then move around, this is our player tank. And are we possessed in that tank? Well, click possess, you end up right in the middle of it. Looks like it to me. So that's pretty cool, right? Now you might ask why this camera's here sitting in the middle of the tank like this. Well, we'll be dealing with the camera in the next video. So that's it. We have managed to tweak our tank. We have AI tanks that look just like the player tank, so on a level ground, literally, and at the moment, and also metaphorically, we want to be on an even keel, to throw out as many English metaphors as I can. We want us and the AI tank to, it wants to be fair, right? So it's fair in terms of our tank is the same as the AI tank, and it's going to be fair later because we're going to force the AI to drive like we do using the same controls and the same physics. And that's going to be really cool because that makes the game much more equitable. So let's move on and look at how we're going to deal with the camera and various other aspects. So see you soon.